Hello and welcome to week 30's Dinosaw. 7 more curious, interesting and hopefully innovative things I've seen this week. So let's crack on. Hopefully they're useful. First one is Diageo and more specifically Johnnie Walker Black Label, which is their sort of affordable top of the range whiskey, I guess. And they've announced that as of 2021 they're going to be launching their premium spirits in this really interesting bottle. So it's 100% recyclable and contains no plastic. So that's really interesting. So glass bottles you might think are quite environmentally friendly, but they do take a huge amount of energy to recycle the glass, to remelt it, for instance, and that usually comes from fossil fuels. So it's using a new company with a new product called Pulpex, and really it's a molded bottle. So lots of pulp goes in, and you get this really interesting bottle. So all food grade, all good. So 2021 is when that's going to be launched. So it's just interesting how premium brands are taking this recyclable products initiative rather than just sort of plastic and cartons. They're going this way, so it's quite interesting. GIMLET have been basically served a class action lawsuit in the US. So GIMLET are a podcast publishing company website, and basically there's the class action lawsuit has been brought by somebody who's served quite a few of these before, so there's a relatively symbolic action in this, and it's the usual sort of millions and millions of dollars claiming damages for those who have lost out, but essentially it's saying that the Gimlet podcasts are not accessible to those who are deaf and hard of hearing, so everything has to be accessible. So the reason this is kind of interesting is during COVID, a lot of people have either found themselves needing help or potentially lost their jobs and therefore availing of services that they never needed to before. And what people have been finding is there's a sort of a secret kind of lack of accessibility going on. So podcasts, yes, but job sites, maybe if you need to get your benefits, for instance. So it's really part of the next I guess activism to just keep this front of mind with everybody. So accessibility even in podcast is needed. So that's yeah, I mean, good luck to that. If it needs a class action lawsuit to get that forwards, then that's what it needs. The UK has banned Huawei 5G kit. Now there are several reasons for this, probably. Some are political and some are maybe founded on some sort of reality about privacy and about owning our own networks. However, the facts of it are that as of 2021, so as of December 21st this year, we're no longer able to order and install any 5G kit from Huawei in our networks. And by 2027, all Huawei kit from 5G networks needs to be removed. So people like Ericsson and Nokia are the only other people that actually provide this kit. So that's going to be, I think there's one other person in the US that does this. So the sort of valid potential worries, I guess, or potential just politics, is that the person who founded Huawei is actually a former engineer with the People's Liberation Army in China. So therefore, the US especially thinks it's going to go to the Chinese Communist Party, and it's sort of a secret operation for that. And one day somebody's going to press a switch, and all of our data is going to be routed through China, and therefore all of your broadband, your data can be sniffed by China. So that's the fear, valid or not, behind it. What you're seeing on the screen right now, this yellow thing, is just me taking a snapshot of the green boxes you see in the street, the cabinets for telecommunications, the broadband ones, and these are the fibre ones around me in North London. And as you can see on the right-hand side, every single vendor of the kit in each one of those is Huawei. So this doesn't apply to the current stuff that is for 4G, 3G and 2G. So that's not going, but it is implicated in a lot of broadband stuff as well. So if you're wondering whether it's just a theoretical threat and it's just a few switches here and there, it's not. It's all pervasive, at least around me. So interesting. Watch that one, and watch out maybe the rise of Nokia and Ericsson again. Who knows? Twitter, there was a huge attack on Wednesday. So it was the same attack for everybody. People from Kim Kardashian and Kanye and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk all got hit with the same tweet. So this is what came out through their official Twitter accounts, and it was essentially saying, please give us some Bitcoin and we'll return it doubled. So this is if you've been into cryptocurrency for a while, this is a common scam that people just go, send me just a bit of Bitcoin and I'll double it. Of course, a million people send a little bit of Bitcoin, all of a sudden they start getting a huge amount of Bitcoins. So this is the same old scam basically, but done on a really, really big level. So while there's quite a lot, have a look at the link, by the way, on this page. It explains probably how it happened, and it was more to do with resetting the two-factor authentication link. So it was probably being hijacked somewhere in that. So it was to do with resetting emails essentially behind the accounts rather than the passwords themselves, possibly with an insider knowledge as well. Plenty of conspiracy theories around this as well. So the two that are almost kind of they go together, which is well, maybe this is a trial run for the US election morning when all of these famous or authoritative people send out a tweet that says, oh, by the way, we've had to move it a week, don't bother voting today. That only goes out to the non-Trump fans, and then the Trump fans don't get it. That's one conspiracy theory, which I think is quite interesting. And the second one is knowing that might be a problem, somebody's already done a hack right now to show that the vulnerabilities could lead to that, and people who've put two and two together are probably now closing those loopholes. So somebody may have got wind of that's what was going on, or it was just a Bitcoin hack. So so it's really interesting having a look at all the conspiracies about how this happened and why it happens. But it did happen. They've closed the loop now. But really interesting how huge networks can still get hit by this sort of thing. The Tempest is the next fighter jet coming from the UK. So if you think Eurofighter, this is what's called a 6th generation fighter jet. So if you're into your fighter jets, I'm not particularly, but the F-35 is kind of the all-singing, all-dancing stealth aircraft. And that's a 5th generation. So the 6th generation is this kind of thing. So this is BAE Systems, and they've sort of hinted, and I think it might just be PR, but they've sort of hinted that it could be electric powered. Now, if you know about batteries and stuff, they're quite heavy and they have limited energy density. So normal airplane fuel has 14 times more energy density per volume than a battery does. So therefore, might as well just stick some aircraft grade fuel in this thing and just go fly it. You'll get 14 times less energy out of a battery. So a lot of experts are thinking possibly you're looking at probably the next generation of fighter jet, which will be 2060. I think there was a Cessna, it was a sort of 9-seat Cessna that took off last month and did a 30-minute flight that was purely electric. And the interesting thing about that was it took something like £4.30 worth of electricity to fly for 30 minutes with one pilot on board, obviously one person, the pilot. Now, if that would have been just normal aviation fuel, it would have been about sort of £230. So you can already see, like, if you can do short trips, it's going to really revolutionise the cost of travel as well, and also the environmental impact. So it's only a good thing. Fighters apparently are going to be a long way out. Most people think commercial jets, jumbos, for instance, which also got binned this week by BA, are probably going to be about 50 years off, so maybe 2070. So maybe not in your lifetime, depending on where you're at. Interesting to note. Animal Crossing. I've avoided this for several months now, just doing an Animal Crossing thing, but it's just got so big I kind of need to talk about it. So Animal Crossing, so just when COVID really hit, Animal Crossing was kind of launching as well, and it was just the most serendipitous timing. So everybody needed something to do, so everybody just started playing Animal Crossing. So a huge culture has started to evolve, and people have started to use it in really interesting ways. There are entire shops for the in-game items, which there have been before, but there's some really interesting things that have started to happen with the new Animal Crossing. So you've got things like Olivia's, sort of the homeware brand, and there's a job description on their website for people to do this as well. I just checked it out. They will give you interior design advice, for instance. So if you want to do that for a living, go and fill out that job description on their website. You can also get help with your weeding. So somebody set up Weedco, and they will actually send somebody into your garden and they will keep the weeds at bay for you. People like Valentino, even Marc Jacobs, have just noticed that they can't do their real shows, so they're doing sporting their new fashion lines in Animal Crossing, and a really interesting one which is called Animal Talking. I mean, bizarrely, I heard from this, I think from the Red Bull magazine that I picked up in Tesco's or Sainsbury's today. So you know, this stuff comes from quite a weird place, but it's really interesting. Animal Talking. So this is essentially a blogger who has a Twitch channel and then played Animal Crossing, but has now managed to get the celebrities who also play Animal Crossing to come on his Animal Crossing talk show. So for instance, one you can see right here is actually Shaggy being interviewed, and lots of stars who play Animal Crossing are interviewed on this show. So it's really interesting how, so you know, we talk about this metaverse, is this where people will start to congregate through virtual reality rather than real life? Could be the start of it, who'd have thought. And finally for this week, we have Amazon, who have been granted a patent for these kind of really weird deployable tracking beacons, as they're called. So basically a lot of tech companies just keep spewing out these patents just so that they've got them, just so somebody else, they might think it's crazy, but you might as well put a patent in. They've got the money to do that and it's risk-free. So occasionally some weird stuff comes up, and this is one of them. So this is like a sycamore seed with a tiny little transponder or a little beacon on them. So the idea would be an autonomous drone goes up with loads of these things in it, flies a certain path, drops a bunch of them, they drop into our environment, and therefore if any other drones are going over which need a little help knowing where to go, for instance, maybe they get lost, maybe there's a GPS issue, then they can start using these in the environment to start giving them some ideas. So you know, in the future, you might start finding these round and about on your flat roof or wherever it is. However, there's a thing called smart dust, which has nobody's really known what to do with it, which is sort of environmental transmitters and environmental sensors the size of dust. So, you know, this might be a practical start to that, assuming they're biodegradable, assuming they don't last a huge amount of time. Not quite sure what happens after that. However, just interesting to think about that sort of thing in the future. So thank you very much. So without further ado, I think we've made it to the end, and I'll see you next week.